This is Dabu 7. You're looking at a massive warehouse fire that has erupted in Parkersburg, West Virginia. We have multiple units responding to this fire, and it is one they said that they had out as of yesterday, but as of this morning, it has spread. And we have officials back on the scene of this warehouse fire that's happening at People's Cartage Incorporated. This is on Camden Avenue. People are being told to shelter in place. Shelter in place extends from the area of Route 50 to Interstate 77 from Camden Avenue all the way down to 7th Street. They're saying this is very toxic air that's getting whipped about, and anyone downwind should be cautious. So if this is heading your way and you've got something sucking air into your home, you're going to want to make sure that it's being filtered or use caution. They're saying that this started on Saturday about 11 a.m. when cardboard boxes caught fire. They fought the fire. And even if you go over and ask some of the grok or this and that, they're saying that it was out. It was put out, but it's not out. It was stopped, and now they're back because it fired back up and it's now spread. It's affecting 3 different warehouses. So this is the problem when you don't have a fire all the way out and don't make sure of it, it can fire back up, and apparently this is causing massive issues. So it's spreading at this point, involving 3 warehouses. They're fighting it, and just a heads up, I'll continue to update on X. Make sure to follow me over there and join me for the live streams Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, here on Dabu 77.
You still want me to cut, right?
Maybe they should have like
Through the fire. Great, so it's going to be big crowds driving, sweating people, a couple of Americans. Don't leave. Yeah. Beautiful. Look at that, ladies. I don't know why everyone's leaving. It's hot as fuck.
This can't be real. I just saw this on X. This can't be real. Tell me if I'm wrong.
In our history has stood more for God than this president. He has been unashamed to speak the word of Jesus. He's been unashamed to speak up for all faiths. And he established this commission so that we would assure Americans their religious liberty, that this great inheritance from our founding fathers would continue for another 250 years. And Mr. President, we believe this will be one of your greatest legacies, and you happen to be the perfect president to be here in the 250th celebration. The question is, what is religious liberty? And if governments can do that, then they become God. The president spoke earlier today of the communist threat in this country. We know what communists do around the world. They remove God.
What the fuck was that? What the fuck was that?
British royal family has been flatline royal since 1840.
Explain that.
Flatline royal means illegitimate, not allowed on the throne. So, from the Battle of Waterloo, the British royal family lost all their money, and they've been funded by the Rothschilds in exchange for breeding rights. So the Rothschilds had the breeding rights to the British royal family from 1819 to 2019.
So what was the purpose of the Rothschilds needing this?
The British royal family were virtually bankrupt from 1815. So the Rothschilds funded the British royal family in exchange for the Rothschilds breeding the royals. So the whole British royal family are Rothschild Batards, and Batard is the royal name for bastard. So what I did in my legal documents is I exposed King George V of England as being sired by Tsar Alexander III of Russia, and I exposed Queen Elizabeth II as sired by artificial insemination by Winston Churchill, who was actually the illegitimate son of King Edward VII.
If you
The
go
British
back through the satanic bloodlines, if you go back through the Illuminati bloodlines, what you'll find is the Great Britain is an occupied country. It's not actually being managed by the British. And what this all goes back to Cain and Abel. It all goes back to Adam and Eve and being beguiled by the serpent, and Cain being the illicit son of Eve. And then they trace the satanic Illuminati, trace their bloodline from Cain, not from Abel. And so what we're looking at right now is perhaps the final battle between good and evil in our modern history. We know who the enemy is, and the enemy is not China, Iran, and Russia. The enemy is the United Kingdom and Israel. So now what they've done is the Rothschilds, the deep state, have linked up with the Vatican. And there is now a new inclusive Vatican, inclusive capitalism blessed by the Pope, who is probably a satanic pedophile. Okay.
Playing the biggest football match of your life while trying to breathe through a straw. That's exactly the challenge England's football players are facing at the Azteca.
Trust me, it's harder than it looks, because Harry Kane and his teammates aren't just up against an 80,000 strong Mexican crowd and memories of Maradona's hand of God, they'll also be battling the altitude. At more than 7,200 feet above sea level, the Azteca sits almost twice as high as Ben Nevis, Britain's tallest mountain. So why does that matter? Could it decide the match? And what's England's smart plan to beat the conditions? Here's what you need to know. This chart shows the elevation of every stadium the Three Lions have featured in during this World Cup. The lowest was the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, where England beat Panama. That's barely 6 foot above sea level. The highest so far has been England's game against DR Congo at the Atlanta Stadium, which is roughly 1,050 feet in altitude. Now let's bring in Mexico's Azteca Stadium, where England will play on Monday morning at a lofty 7,220 foot above sea level. The iconic venue towers over anywhere England have played so far. In fact, it's over twice the height of Snowdon and around 13 times higher than the highest professional ground in England, West Brom Stadium, the Hawthorns.
So what effect does that have? I've come to the London Altitude Centre into a special chamber to find out. The higher you go, the lower the air pressure becomes. The air is thinner, so you're breathing less oxygen. That means your body has to work much harder just to do the same amount of exercise. Your heart beats faster, you get out of breath more easily, as you can hear. You can become dehydrated more easily, and fatigue sets in much quicker.
Now that's bad enough for newsreaders like me, but for elite athletes, the effects can be even more significant. Studies suggest fatigue can increase around 15 to 20% at this altitude. Players simply can't cover as much ground. Interestingly, top sprinting speeds actually don't change. The problem is recovery. Because lactic acid builds up faster in the muscles, players need longer between explosive runs, and that could make England's usual high-pressing style much harder to sustain over 90 minutes. Previous teams visiting Mexico have often faded as the match has gone on, meaning England may have to use more substitutes earlier just to keep fresh legs on the pitch. And it's not just the physical performance. Your brain also relies on oxygen. With less oxygen available, decision-making, concentration, even reaction times can all suffer. Look at the opening match played at the Azteca. 3 players were sent off. Now, altitude might not have been the only reason, but it certainly won't have helped. So what if both teams are playing in the same conditions? Doesn't that make it fair? Well, not exactly. Mexico are used to those conditions. They've played 3 of their 4 World Cup matches at the Azteca, winning every one without conceding a single goal. The human body normally needs around 2 weeks to properly adapt to high altitude. England, meanwhile, arrive in Mexico City just 48 hours before kickoff. Manager Thomas Tuchel has already admitted there's simply not enough time for the squad to acclimatise.
The heat and the humidity will not be the problem for us. We are used to that. We are used to that from training times, and we are used to it from our prep camp in Florida. My understanding is that we cannot adapt to the altitude. That is just a huge advantage that Mexico will have. It just takes too much time. We have only 3 days in between this match. This is physically just not possible to adapt to the altitude, which is quite high.
Instead, they're relying on a tactic known as fly in, fly out. They'll be arriving in Mexico just 48 hours before the game. That's meant to be just before what's referred to as the dead zone kicks in. That's the point where athletes begin to struggle with breathing, fatigue and fitness. So essentially England are banking on outpacing the altitude. So is there anything England can do beforehand? Some elite athletes try to simulate altitude before they travel. England's rugby team, preparing for matches in South Africa, have been training with masks designed to restrict oxygen intake. Long-distance runners like Mo Farah have famously trained at altitude for years, allowing their bodies to adapt before returning to sea level. But one thing that's much harder to prepare for is the football itself. In thinner air, the ball travels differently. Crosses fly faster, shots dip less, spin behaves differently. Jordan Pickford, England's goalkeeper, will have to adjust on the fly, whereas Mexico's keeper has had weeks to get used to those conditions. So, while England may have the stronger squad, everyone knows football isn't played on paper. This match will be played in front of 80,000 passionate home Mexican fans, more than 7,000 feet above sea level, in a stadium where Mexico have lost just 2 of their 89 matches. If England are going to win at the Azteca, they'll have to overcome much more than just the opposition.
The World Cup is not what you think, and it is not a global sporting event. It is a meticulously engineered, macro-scale, biospiritual extraction ritual. You are going to see exactly how the very architecture of these modern stadiums are designed to siphon your life force. But you first must understand the advanced scalar physics of why the control grid requires you to obsess over a game. To the uninitiated, sports are mere entertainment. But to the exopolitical entities managing this simulation, they are an energetic harvest. According to the unredacted archives of the Calantic Science and the out-of-body research of Robert Monroe, Earth functions as a thermodynamic energy farm that extracts loosh, a rare, potent electromagnetic energy generated by intense emotional states like anxiety and tribal conflict and the despair of losing. The system architects actively stoke these negative, low vibrations through gladiator-style events such as football and boxing to trigger your survival drive and prompt massive adrenaline dumps. And since human genetics carry an instinct to fight and conquer, populations become deeply addicted to this manufactured friction. In the physics of photomultipliers, every single arch within these structures functions as a dynode, accelerating and multiplying the acoustic and emotional energy of the crowd by millions of times. The fear of losing grips the masses, so tightly that they generate an ocean of expelled bioelectric energy, producing a highly specific low resonance frequency tone, the B-flat brown note. So, where does that energy go? These stadiums are not merely placed randomly. They are connected to the worldwide Nibirian Diotic Crystal Grid, an artificial control network anchored miles beneath the Earth's surface. When millions of humans gather and synchronize their emotional distress over a World Cup match, their expended energy is captured by city-sized underground crystal structures acting as giant capacitors. This massive energetic payload is then broadcast across the entire planet to power the quarantine frequency fence, trapping humanity in a localized, low vibrational hypnosis. The corporate elite are merely middle managers, middlemen, in a trans-dimensional economy of spiritual energy robbery, feeding entities that cannot generate their own light. But here is the absolute glitch in their matrix. The parasite requires your active emotional dysregulation to feed. By regulating your nervous system and refusing to surrender your consciousness to manufactured tribalism, you instantly sever the energetic conduit. If you separate the host from the parasite literally shrivels up and starves to death. You are not a spectator. You are a battery. It's time to unplug. Leave a comment and let me know what you think. And if you wish, drop the word truth and I'll send you my Clear the Static detox. Let's reclaim our signal.